Good morning, dear friend. It's 5:30 a.m., and I'm sitting here in my kitchen, watching the darkness slowly give way to dawn. There's something sacred about these early morning hours, isn't there? When the world is still quiet, and it's just you and God. You know Proverbs 3:5-6 tells us to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. But if I'm honest, I've spent most of my life doing exactly the opposite. I've been gripping the steering wheel of my life so tight that my knuckles turned white, convinced that if I could just control everything, plan every detail, anticipate every problem, then somehow I could guarantee the outcomes I wanted. Maybe you know that feeling. Maybe you're sitting there right now, carrying the weight of responsibilities that feel too heavy, wrestling with decisions that seem too big, or facing challenges that feel impossible to overcome. Today, I want to share with you the most liberating discovery of my life, the sacred act of surrender, of placing our entire life journey into God's capable hands. Before we dive into this together, I'd love to know where you're joining me from this morning. Drop a comment below and tell me your city or country. Hit that like button if you're ready to explore what it means to let God lead your journey, and don't forget to subscribe so we can continue praying together. Now let me tell you about the night that changed everything for me. 3 months ago, I thought I had life figured out. I was managing my small construction business, providing for my family, showing up at church every Sunday. From the outside, everything looked good. But inside, I was drowning in the exhausting weight of trying to orchestrate every detail of everyone's life. It started when my father had his first stroke. Picture this scene with me. It's 2 a.m. in a sterile hospital waiting room. The fluorescent lights are buzzing overhead, casting that harsh, unforgiving glow that makes everything look gray. The smell of disinfectant burns my nostrils. I'm sitting in one of those uncomfortable plastic chairs, surrounded by medical forms, insurance documents, and my phone that won't stop ringing. My wife, Sarah, is beside me, her eyes red from crying. She's supposed to start her new job next week, a career transition she's been working toward for 2 years. My teenage daughter, Emma, keeps texting from her dorm room, asking when she can come home, if Grandpa's going to be okay, why I sound so stressed every time we talk. My business is going through its slow winter season, and now we're looking at medical bills that could wipe out Emma's college fund. But here's what was eating me alive. I felt like I had to have all the answers. I had to be the one who researched every doctor, understood every treatment option, managed every family member's emotions, kept the business running, and somehow hold everyone together, while my own world was falling apart. I remember sitting in that waiting room, my mind racing. I have to fix this. I have to find the right specialist. I have to figure out how to pay for everything. I have to keep Sarah from worrying. I have to make sure Emma can still finish college. I have to keep my employees paid. I have to. The pressure was suffocating. Every decision felt like life or death. Every phone call brought new complications. Every day brought new challenges that required immediate solutions. I was working 18-hour days trying to manage Dad's care, keep the business afloat, and be strong for everyone who was counting on me. You see, I grew up with a father who taught me that real men solve their own problems, that asking for help was a sign of weakness, that if you worked hard enough, planned well enough, worried enough, you could control the outcomes. And for years that philosophy seemed to work. But now, sitting in that hospital room, watching my strong, capable father struggle to remember my name, I realized something terrifying. All my planning, all my control, all my determination couldn't stop this. I couldn't orchestrate a recovery. I couldn't guarantee outcomes. I couldn't fix everything no matter how hard I tried. And the scariest part, everyone was looking to me to have it all together. My employees needed leadership during the company's difficult season. Sarah needed support through her own career stress. Emma needed reassurance that her world wasn't falling apart. But inside, I was crumbling, and I couldn't let anyone see it. The weight of being everyone's rock was crushing me, but I didn't know any other way to live. Have you ever felt like Atlas trying to hold up the entire world on your shoulders? That's exactly where I found myself. But unlike the mythical Atlas, my burden was self-imposed. I had convinced myself that if I wasn't carrying everything, if I wasn't in control of every detail, then everything would fall apart. Picture this. It's 3 weeks into Dad's hospital stay. He's had a second stroke, and the doctors are using words like significant brain damage and long-term care. I'm standing in that same sterile hallway, but now it feels like the walls are closing in. Sarah has just broken down sobbing in my arms, telling me she can't handle watching her father-in-law deteriorate while trying to start her new job. Emma calls crying because she can't afford to come home for Christmas break, and she's feeling guilty for being at school while Grandpa is sick. In that moment, I felt like I was trying to hold up a crumbling building with my bare hands, while everyone I loved was trapped inside counting on me to keep them safe. The weight was unbearable, but I couldn't let go, because letting go felt like letting everyone down. At work, my crew was looking to me for guidance about whether we'd have enough projects to keep everyone employed through the winter. I couldn't show uncertainty because they had families depending on their paychecks. With friends, everyone assumed I had it all together, because I was the guy who usually helped solve other people's problems. So no one thought to check on me. Even in prayer, I found myself trying to present solutions to God, rather than admitting complete helplessness. God, if you'll just help Dad recover enough to move to assisted living, I can manage the finances. If you'll just send me one big contract, I can cover the medical bills. If you'll just help Sarah settle into her new job, she'll be less stressed. I was trying to negotiate with the creator of the universe like he was a business partner who needed my strategic input. The isolation was suffocating. I had painted myself into a corner where I couldn't be weak, couldn't be uncertain, couldn't admit that I was drowning. The mountain in front of me looked impossible to climb. It was jagged and treacherous with hidden crevices and no clear path to the summit. Every time I thought I'd made progress, another crisis would send me sliding backward. I had tried to conquer problems through sheer determination my entire adult life. When business was slow, I worked longer hours and knocked on more doors. When relationships were strained, I tried harder to fix and manage other people's emotions. When finances were tight, I created more detailed budgets and took on extra projects. But none of my usual strategies were working anymore. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't meant to move mountains. I was meant to trust the one who speaks to mountains and tells them where to go. But admitting that felt like admitting failure. What if I surrendered control and everything fell apart? What if my lack of micromanagement led to disaster? What if people stopped counting on me because I couldn't guarantee outcomes? For 3 months, I had been trying to hold everything together through force of will, and I was failing everyone anyway. The exhaustion was bone deep. The stress was affecting my health, my marriage, my relationship with Emma, and my ability to lead my business effectively. I was so afraid of looking weak that I had become ineffective. King David wrote in Psalm 142, "When my spirit grows faint within me, it is you who watch over my way." But I hadn't been letting God watch over my way. I had been trying to be my own watchman, my own guide, my own source of strength. Standing in that hospital corridor at 3 in the morning, I finally understood that my isolation wasn't strength. It was pride disguised as responsibility, and it was time to learn a different way. That night, I found myself in the hospital chapel at 4 a.m. It was empty except for soft lighting and a presence I could feel but couldn't explain. I had avoided this room for weeks because I was afraid that if I really opened my heart to God, I might completely fall apart. But I couldn't carry the weight anymore. I sat in the back pew, and for the first time in months, I wasn't trying to present solutions or negotiate outcomes. I wasn't trying to be strong or have answers. I was just broken, exhausted, and ready to admit that my way wasn't working. I looked down at my hands. They were clenched into fists, knuckles white from 3 months of trying to grip control of everything. Slowly, deliberately, I opened them and turned my palms upward. It was such a simple physical action, but it felt like the most significant thing I had ever done. Jehovah Rapha, my healer, I whispered. I surrender Dad's health to you. I don't know what recovery looks like. I don't know how long he has or what quality of life he'll have, but I'm placing his healing journey into your hands. I trust your timeline more than my urgency. The prayer continued, and with each surrender, I felt a weight lifting that I didn't even realize I had been carrying. El Shaddai, God Almighty, I surrender my business to you. If it thrives, let it be for your glory. If it struggles, help me trust your redirection. I release my need to guarantee my employees' security and trust you to provide for their families through your wisdom, not my control. Jehovah Jireh, my provider, I surrender our financial fears to you. The medical bills, the college expenses, the business cash flow. I've been trying to solve money problems through worry and overwork. But you own the cattle on 1,000 hills. You know our needs before we ask. I choose to trust your provision over my planning. Jehovah Shalom, Prince of Peace, I surrender my family's emotions to you. I've been trying to manage Sarah's stress, fix Emma's worries, and control everyone's responses to this crisis. But I can't manufacture peace for other people. I can only offer love and support while trusting you to work in their hearts. This wasn't giving up. This was the difference between passive resignation and active trust. When a child lets go of bicycle handlebars to let their father guide the bike, they're not falling. They're trusting. They're moving from the exhaustion of trying to control something they're not equipped to handle into the security of partnership with someone who has the wisdom and strength they lack. Luke 22:42 became my anthem. Not my will, but yours be done. Jesus himself modeled this surrender in his darkest hour. If the Son of God could trust the Father's plan, even when it included suffering, then surely I could trust God with my much smaller challenges. Isaiah 55:8-9 reminded me that God's thoughts are not my thoughts. His ways are not my ways. My limited perspective had been trying to orchestrate outcomes based on fear and immediate relief. But God's perspective included purposes and plans that I couldn't see from my vantage point. The emotional shift was immediate and profound. Instead of feeling like I was carrying everything alone, I felt like I had just entered into partnership with the Creator of the universe. Instead of fear about unknown outcomes, I felt curious anticipation about how God would work. Instead of the crushing responsibility to control everything, I felt the freedom to influence what I could while trusting God with what I couldn't. That morning, I walked out of the chapel with the same external circumstances, but a completely transformed internal reality. I was no longer the sole manager of my family's universe. I was a steward, a partner, a collaborator with divine wisdom. And for the first time in months, I felt peace. The changes didn't happen overnight, but they were unmistakable. Within days of that chapel surrender, I began to see God's hand moving in ways that could only be described as divine partnership. The first shift was internal. I had peace that made no logical sense, given that our circumstances hadn't changed yet. Dad was still in the hospital. The medical bills were still mounting. Sarah was still stressed about her new job. Emma was still worried about college finances. But inside I felt steady, grounded, like I was no longer white-knuckling my way through life. Sarah noticed immediately. "You seem different," she said over coffee the next morning. "Calmer, less like you're carrying the world on your shoulders." And she was right. I was carrying the same responsibilities, but I was no longer carrying them alone. Then, the practical miracles began unfolding. Not dramatic Hollywood-style interventions, but the kind of divine orchestration that could only be explained as God's fingerprints on our situation. For Dad's medical care, a neurologist who specialized in stroke recovery contacted us. Dr. Martinez had been recommended by a nurse who overheard our conversation in the hallway. She mentioned a new therapy program that most doctors weren't aware of yet. When I called her office, she had one opening that week due to a cancellation. During the consultation, she explained. Treatment options that previous doctors hadn't mentioned, and helped us understand that recovery could look different than we had imagined, but still be meaningful. The insurance breakthrough came next. For weeks, I had been battling with Dad's insurance company about coverage for the experimental therapy Dr. Martinez recommended. I had made dozens of phone calls, filled out countless forms, and hit dead end after dead end. Then 3 days after my chapel prayer, I received a call from a supervisor I had never spoken with before. She had reviewed Dad's case and found a clause in his policy that covered exactly this type of treatment. The approval came through within 48 hours. At work, I received a call from a former client I hadn't heard from in 2 years. Their regular contractor had suffered a heart attack, and they needed someone to complete an urgent renovation project. The timeline was tight, but the payment would cover Dad's medical bills that insurance didn't handle. When I explained our family situation, they offered to pay half the fee up front, something that never happens in construction. But perhaps the most beautiful intervention was what happened within our family. My siblings, who hadn't spoken to each other in years due to old grudges and misunderstandings, began reaching out to help with Dad's care decisions. My brother drove in from 3 states away. My sister started researching rehabilitation facilities. Instead of me having to coordinate and manage everyone's contributions, they began working together organically. Sarah's career transition, which had been causing her tremendous anxiety, began flowing more smoothly. Her new supervisor turned out to be someone who had also cared for an aging parent and offered flexible scheduling during Dad's recovery period. Instead of the conflict between work and family that we had feared, her job became a source of support and understanding. Emma surprised us by calling with a different perspective on the college financial situation. She had been researching scholarship opportunities and found grants specifically for students dealing with family medical crises. Rather than feeling like a burden, she felt empowered to contribute to the solution. Her grades actually improved as she found purpose in overcoming challenges rather than being overwhelmed by them. Romans 8:28 became our family verse. All things work together for good for those who love God. We were witnessing this truth in real time. Not that everything became easy or pain-free, but that God was weaving even the difficult circumstances into a pattern of growth, connection, and provision that we couldn't have orchestrated ourselves. Ephesians 3:20 reminded me daily that God was doing immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine. My prayers had been focused on damage control and survival. God's responses were about transformation, deeper relationships, and spiritual growth that would serve us for years to come. The partnership principle became clear. God's part was divine wisdom, supernatural provision, perfect timing, and heart transformation. My part was faithful action, trust in the process, obedience to guidance, and gratitude in waiting. When I stopped trying to do God's part and focused on my part, everything began working more effectively than my previous attempts at total control. I was learning that divine timing isn't delay, it's preparation. The weeks of struggle had developed, character deepened relationships, and prepared us for blessings we wouldn't have been ready to receive earlier. God wasn't withholding good things. He was developing our capacity to handle them well. 6 months later, life looked completely different. Not because our circumstances had become perfect, but because I had learned to walk in daily partnership with divine guidance. The transformation touched every area of my life. My morning routine changed completely. Instead of waking up and immediately checking my phone, watching my mind race with the day's problems, I began each day with quiet surrender. God, this day belongs to you. Show me how to steward it well. Guide my decisions, guard my heart, and help me be a blessing to everyone I encounter. Decision-making evolved from anxious strategizing to peaceful collaboration with God's wisdom. When the major choice about Dad's long-term care arose, instead of researching every facility myself and trying to control every variable, I prayed for guidance and invited the family to visit 3 options together. Dad himself expressed a clear preference for one facility, and it happened to be the most affordable option with the best therapy program. The decision felt confirmed by peace, rather than forced by fear. At work, a business crisis became an opportunity to practice surrender in real time. A major client threatened to pull a contract due to supply chain delays that were completely outside our control. My old response would have been panic, desperate promises, and sleepless nights strategizing damage control. Instead, I prayed for wisdom, had an honest conversation with the client about the challenges, and trusted God with the outcome. The client appreciated my honesty and transparency. Rather than pulling the contract, he extended our deadline and referred 2 new major contracts because he respected how we handled the difficult situation. Most contractors would have made excuses or promises they couldn't keep, he told me. Your integrity in a tough situation tells me you're someone I want to do business with long term. My marriage with Sarah transformed as I learned the difference between supporting and controlling. Instead of trying to solve her career stress, offering unsolicited advice, or managing her emotions, I focused on listening without fixing, praying for her daily, and supporting her decisions, even when I didn't fully understand them. She felt heard and valued rather than managed. Our intimacy deepened because she no longer felt like she had to perform for my approval or accept my solutions. With Emma, I stopped trying to control her college choices, manage her social life, or fix her problems before she asked for help. Instead, I offered guidance when she requested it, prayed for her protection and wisdom daily, and trusted her growing maturity. Our relationship improved dramatically because she felt respected rather than micromanaged. She began seeking my advice more often because she knew it came without pressure or judgment. The principles I was learning extended to every relationship. With employees, I began leading with vulnerability, admitting when I wasn't sure about something, and seeking team input on major decisions. Instead of feeling like weak leadership, this approach built trust and collaboration. My crew felt valued and started contributing ideas that improved our efficiency and quality. With competitors, I stopped viewing other contractors as threats and started seeing opportunities for collaboration. We began referring projects that weren't good fits for our company and receiving referrals in return. The scarcity mindset that had driven me to compete aggressively was replaced by abundance thinking that created mutual benefit. Even with difficult customers, I learned to respond with grace while setting healthy boundaries. Instead of taking unreasonable demands personally or feeling pressured to promise impossible timelines, I could offer realistic solutions and trust God with customers who weren't satisfied. Paradoxically, this approach led to higher customer satisfaction because people respected honest communication over desperate people-pleasing. Proverbs 16:3 became my business motto. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans. James 1:5 guided my decision-making process. If any of you lacks wisdom, ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault. Psalm 32:8 was my daily reminder. I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye on you. Learning to recognize divine guidance became an ongoing adventure. Peace became my primary indicator for major decisions. When choices aligned with God's will, I experienced supernatural peace, even when the decisions were challenging or required sacrifice. Open and closed doors became obvious when I wasn't forcing outcomes based on my timeline or preferences. God spoke through wise counsel in unexpected ways. A casual conversation with a neighbor led to understanding Dad's insurance benefits. Emma's college advisor mentioned grant opportunities I had never heard of. Dr. Martinez recommended a support group that became a source of ongoing encouragement and practical wisdom for our family. Scripture alignment became essential for major choices. Any decision that contradicted biblical principles raised red flags regardless of how appealing the immediate benefits might appear. This filter prevented several business decisions that would have compromised integrity for short-term profit. The growth of trust happened in layers. Small daily surrenders. Choosing to trust God with minor frustrations and everyday decisions. Monthly challenges like financial pressures, family conflicts, and business complications became opportunities to practice surrender on a larger scale. Major life events like health crises and career changes became testimonies of God's faithfulness that strengthened trust for future challenges. As my testimony developed, opportunities to encourage others appeared naturally. Customers going through their own family crises asked how I stayed so calm during stressful situations. Other business owners dealing with difficult seasons wanted to understand what had changed in my leadership approach. Friends noticed that Sarah and I seemed happier and more connected despite the challenges we had faced. Every obstacle, every mountain, every impossibility must bow to the name of Jesus. When we place our lives in God's hands, we partner with the Creator of the universe, and that changes everything. Looking back over the past year, I can see God's fingerprints on every part of our journey. Dad's recovery exceeded every doctor's expectation. While he didn't return to his previous level of independence, he regained enough function to enjoy meaningful relationships and take satisfaction in small daily accomplishments. More importantly, our relationship deepened during his rehabilitation as I learned to value connection over productivity and presence over problem solving. The business didn't just survive the difficult season. It thrived through partnership rather than competition, integrity rather than desperation, and collaboration rather than control. We ended the year with more consistent contracts, higher profit margins, and a team culture that attracted the best workers in our area. People wanted to work for a company where they felt valued and heard. Our marriage grew stronger through crisis rather than being weakened by stress. Sarah's career transition opened doors neither of us had anticipated, leading to opportunities that provided both financial stability and personal fulfillment. Emma finished her sophomore year with confidence and security, having learned that challenges could be overcome through community and creative solutions rather than just individual effort. Extended family relationships that had been strained for years were healed through Dad's illness. The crisis that could have divided us became the catalyst for forgiveness, communication, and renewed connection. We discovered that vulnerability and mutual support created stronger bonds than pretending everything was always fine. But the most profound transformation was personal. I learned the paradox of control. False control, the kind I had practiced for years, was exhausting anxiety, producing relationship damaging, and spiritually isolating. True control came through surrendering to God's wisdom, finding peace in trust, and experiencing supernatural outcomes that I never could have orchestrated through human effort. Daily surrender became a lifestyle rather than a crisis response. Each morning, I dedicate the day to God with a simple prayer. This day belongs to you, God. Lead me in every decision, guard my heart against anxiety, and help me trust your timing in every situation. Throughout the day, I pause before major choices to seek divine wisdom rather than reacting from fear or habit. Evening gratitude has become a practice that transforms my perspective on challenges. Instead of focusing on problems that need solving, I recognize God's faithfulness in small details and unexpected provisions. Weekly reflection helps me celebrate divine interventions I might otherwise take for granted and learn from situations where I defaulted back to old patterns of control. The biblical promises that sustained me through the crisis continue to guide daily life. Isaiah 26:3 reminds me that perfect peace belongs to those whose minds are stayed on God. Matthew 11:28-30 offers rest for the weary and peace for those who learn God's gentle way of living. Philippians 4:6-7 provides the antidote to anxiety through prayer, thanksgiving, and trust that produces peace beyond understanding. You weren't created to be God. You were created to walk with Him. Your current struggle isn't your final destination. God is writing a story of redemption in your life that will become a testimony of His faithfulness for others who need hope. What if instead of gripping tighter, you opened your hands to receive what God wants to give you? What if instead of running faster on the treadmill of control, you learned to rest in His perfect pace for your life? What if the very thing you're afraid to surrender is the key to the breakthrough you've been praying for? Let me ask you this question, and I really want you to think about your answer. What area of your life needs surrender today? Is it a relationship you've been trying to control? A financial situation you've been managing through worry? A health challenge you've been facing alone? A career decision you've been overthinking? Drop a comment below and share what God is calling you to surrender. Sometimes just naming it out loud is the first step toward freedom. If this message encouraged you, hit that like button so others can find hope and surrender. Subscribe and turn on notifications so we can continue this journey of faith together. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they don't have to carry everything alone. Thank you for trusting me with your time this morning and for being part of this community of people who are learning to walk by faith rather than fear. May you experience the peace that comes from knowing God is leading your journey. May you discover that His plans for you are better than anything you could orchestrate yourself. And may you find rest for your soul in the beautiful surrender of placing your life in His loving hands. God bless you, and I'll see you in tomorrow's prayer.